What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now in today's video, we're back on r/ProRevenge. Now trust me, you're gonna want to get yourself strapped in for this one. I've only got one story for you in today's video, but it is an absolute classic. Keep watching to find out what happens when an innocent neighbour runs in to a criminal landlord. I unleashed the monster of bureaucracy upon my neighbour and watched it destroy him. This is a story of how patience is key, and how letting someone else get revenge for you is by far easier than doing it yourself. The setup. I live in one of those doubled up houses where they build two houses adjacent to each other with a mirrored layout, so we share a wall but are otherwise completely separate. For years, the house next to me belonged to a nice old lady who you never really noticed or had any trouble with. When she died and the house was resold, the troubles began. The target is someone who I will refer to as Jack Sparrow, for reasons that will become clear later. Jack owns a sizable construction business, does some real estate on the side. He buys the house and rents it to a bunch of foreign construction workers that work for his business. I say foreign because it is relevant to the story. There are rumours Jack is doing some shady stuff to have these work for him dirt cheap, by claiming that they're national workers in their native country and paying them according to that wage, and not the much higher minimum wage of my country. Not exactly on the up and up, possibly unreported labour as well. Anyways, he stuffs 4 to 6 of these in said house for them to live while they work here. Now, I do not have anything against foreign construction workers, but these guys living next door have two traits that are very problematic. They are extremely loud and they do not give a frick about anyone else. We're talking non-stop music and partying starting Thursday evening throughout the entire weekend until they leave at 5 AM Monday morning to go to work. Seriously, I don't know how or when they sleep. It's literally non-stop. We're talking I'm wearing headphones but still cannot hear my own sound over their music loud, since it would appear that they've designated the living room, adjacent to the shared wall, as the party room where the fun happens. At first, I do the neighbourly thing and just suck it up, thinking it's just one party, just one weekend. But after the third one in a row, I go over to ask them to turn it down. Since, you know, night disturbance, it's technically illegal to blast music this loud, hearable on the street and across the street by my other neighbours who have also complained. I'm met with a half-hearted, so sorry, we'll fix. Except nothing changes. I go over several more times, each time angrier, each time met with, but it's not loud. If I can hear your music in my own house, over my own TV and music, I would say that is, in fact, too loud. So I contact Jack, since he is their landlord, and explain the situation. After which I'm met with an abrupt, sorry, not my frickin' problem. Basically, Jack told me to get effed. So I involve police and call them every time things get out of hand. After about a dozen calls, sometimes even twice in the same night, it is clear that even regular police interference doesn't help the situation. I should mention that I am a lawyer, so I know what the next legal steps are. I also know that other than a token paper from a judge saying their music is too loud, I'm not really going to get anything. Things would, like they already sometimes had, become a cat and mouse game where they would blast their music extremely loud to annoy me or wake me up for a few brief moments, so that by the time I could get proof or police show up, there would be no music. So I'm deadlocked, with my only further option being pretty useless and a waste of time. At this point, I'm biding my time and just waiting until something changes. I'm not saying that I condone people who bludgeon their neighbour to death with a rusty pipe, but I do somewhat understand what would drive someone to that point. The mistake. One day, I'm at home, and I notice quite a lot of ruckus next door, more so even than usual. Suddenly, I see through my garden window that a wall is being partially torn down. You see, sometime over the years, the neighbours had built a small adjacent side building adjoining the main house. It was right on the border between us, and when the gardens were being refenced, the wall was used as a divider to save on fencing. Said wall was now in the process of having its top part ripped off by a crane. I was not informed of any of this, which, while not technically needed, would have been the nice thing to do. I go take a walk so I can take a look at what they're doing and see that they've torn down the entire side building. The remaining wall between our gardens is the only part that has been kept intact, and even then, not the top parts. Being a lawyer, and specifically a construction/permit lawyer, I know two things. One, stuff like this is not allowed without a pre-approved permit from the city. And two, there is no way in heck they have said permit, as I would have seen the application for it. I regularly have to check the online, public, accessible by everyone application to see what permits are being applied for my job. And when I do, I tend to look over my own area, just so I can keep up with what is being planned, of course. This is it, the moment I have been waiting for. The situation has changed and the time has come to exact revenge. A quick email sent to the municipal authorities lets me do my civic duty of reporting a potential crime. The fact that someone is building or demolishing stuff without a permit. Since this is a simple report, no response happens, since I'm not an official victim or anything yet. Since no further construction happens for a few days, and everything was removed, I assume that was that, and they would only tear down the side structure since it was starting to fall apart due to age. The neighbours have moved all of their stuff that was in said building onto their lawn and haphazardly covered it with a tarp. The next week, more construction materials are being delivered and construction starts. I send a new email to city services with new pictures saying that apparently there is more planned and that I hope they undertake the appropriate action. Instant response less than an hour later. They'd called Jack after the first time to inform him that what he was doing required a permit, and he'd assured them that he didn't know that. That is total BS, by the way. He's in construction, of course he knows, and that he would stop construction and request the permit. They called him again after my email, reprimanded him for not following his earlier promise, and he said again he would shut it down. I happened to be working from home that day, and had to stop myself from waving to the construction crew as they left. Later that day, I get an angry phone call from Jack, who accuses me of reporting him, and that I would be sorry. He would come after me for damages for his delays. I respectfully inform him that even if I reported him, reports are in my name but not published and anonymized in later files, I wouldn't have done anything wrong, because from the looks of it, he didn't have a permit and should have known that before he started working illegally without one. I end the call before I start to sound too happy with things. Jack has, at this point, no idea what I have initiated with this. He is Jack Sparrow, and I have just rung the bell that awakens the kraken that will destroy him. He just doesn't know it yet. The kraken. You see, there is a good reason why most people consult an expert and or a lawyer when they want to apply for a permit. The rules involved are so convoluted and needlessly complex that navigating them as a non-professional is extremely hard and time-consuming, and a single mistake can torpedo your entire case, forcing you to do it all over. I have killed entire projects and have seen clients' projects killed by pointing out that on page 127, section 35(1)(a), something was left blank that should have been answered. It's as simple as that. I did some digging and found out that the previous owners of the house had actually consulted each other about the side building and agreed on making the wall part of the divider between their gardens. So much so that they shared the costs of it and the ownership. That wall that he destroyed part of, it was also my wall, which of course means I'm entitled to damages. But that is not the important part. The important part is that he needs my permission to do anything to that wall. So when he applied for a permit a few weeks later, added bonus, rowdy neighbours stuff is still out in the open, covered by just a tarp, since they expected this to be a quick smash and replace job that would take a few weeks at most, I went to city centre and looked at the application. I noticed that they were planning to do some stuff to said wall that I own 50% of. So, I filed a complaint, following proper procedure about the permit, namely that even if granted, it could never be executed since Jack needed permission from me in regards to the wall, and he didn't have it, nor was I intending to grant it. This should kill his permit, since permits cannot be granted if you know in advance they cannot be realised. There's no sense granting a permit to build a certain kind of house when you know they're never actually going to build it. Now, Jack was a bit of a smooth talker, and as a construction entrepreneur had his connections, and permits are a political decision here just as much a legal one. So, despite a 100% correct legal objection that should have killed his permit, it went through. He actually called me about it to gloat a little. No worries, one can appeal a permit in my country. The only requirement is that you pay a €100 fee, which I gladly paid. The appeal instance is a sub-national instance and does not care one bit about Jack's political ties or the half-hearted BS that the city officials wrote to justify granting the permit in spite of the concerns I raised. They terminate his permit without any hesitation on the aforementioned legal grounds. Jack sees his permit blocked until he fixes the issue, which he can't because I'm not really inclined to agree with his plans for our wall, you see. At this point, going through 2 lengthy procedures, it has been over 7 months. The neighbours have had an unfinished construction project in their yard the entire time, forced to store their stuff elsewhere, something that was always supposed to be a temporary thing for a few weeks while we build, turned into something that was taking months with no end in sight. But wait, there's more. The above was the administrative part of the matter, him getting the permits. Now, doing construction work without a permit is also a criminal offence. And of course, my report got passed around to the appropriate instances. So now, Jack was also the subject of a criminal procedure for construction offence. Not only did he risk fines and jail time, he was a construction business and used his own construction business for the work he did on the property. So his company was also on the hook. And one of the sentences that can be given in these types of crimes is to be prohibited to do construction or construction-related activity as a business, either permanently or temporarily. Not only was he personally on the line, his entire business was as well. During this debacle, Jack tried to sell the property. This didn't really go too well though because of a few reasons. 1. The property was inflicted with an illegal situation. The demolished side building was torn down illegally, and until said illegal status was resolved, it would stick to the property, which tends to kill the property value quite a bit, since nobody wants to buy something that they'll have to spend time and money on to make legal again by either rebuilding the torn down building or getting a regularization permit for it. Made even worse by the fact that he applied for said permits and had it denied, so he couldn't even claim that said permits would be super easy to get. Secondly, is Jack never intended to sell the property in its current state. What he, as I now know, has done in the past is buy cheap old houses like the one next to me. He put some of his crew in it, who can't complain about the subpar accommodation. They trash the place because they don't care, and he lets them. Then when the place is done, he tears it down and sells it to a developer or develops it himself. However, due to his construction crime and the accompanying status for the property, Step 2 was not an option. He couldn't renovate it the way it needed to be. Small renovations would not be enough because covering the crime was always a requirement in any permit he would request for the building, and because of me, he couldn't cover it. He couldn't sell it either, because the place was trashed, and any developer looking at it would dip out when they realised there was a construction issue and a vocal neighbour who would oppose anything big that they would try to do there. There are lots of easier properties to develop than that one. In conclusion, anyway, that is where we are today. Jack is staring down the barrel of a criminal court procedure that is about to happen, where he is risking his business and livelihood. His existing projects also gather special attention from city services now, since he is now outed to them as someone who cuts corners on permits and regulations. He cannot really sell the property unless he cuts a massive loss, since in its current state it is absolutely trashed. He cannot develop it or sell to a developer because all development plans involve the adjoining wall, which he cannot use in big ways unless he gets my permission. The rowdy neighbours are stuck living in a smaller house than what they had, in a place they trashed but that cannot really be renovated or fixed in the major way that it needs. They have quieted down a lot, possibly because Jack blames them for his current situation, which isn't wrong, I suppose. I have awakened the kraken and set it off on Jack Sparrow, and it utterly ruined him. And the best part is that I had very little to do with it. All I really did was nudge the abomination that is municipal bureaucracy and point it in his direction, and they did the rest. I could tell you that he called me to complain and even beg about letting him use the wall the way he needs it to, so that he can get on with his business and fix the issues and use them to show his good faith in court in the criminal procedure. That he was losing money and customers over this and was in danger of losing his entire business, and that I then smugly replied with, "Not my frickin' problem." But he didn't. So for now, we'll just have to imagine that he did. And there we go. That is the end of that story. A really great one. But I mean, honestly, for me, it feels like that's just the beginning of this whole debacle because OP and Jack have still got to go. Well, not OP really, OP is just a bystander, let's be real. Jack has got to go through so many, you know, legal battles and go through all these court proceedings, and we really have no idea how they're going to go, right? I mean, we can always think that they're going to go in a certain way and hopefully go with OP and go with, you know, common sense, but you never really know. So I'm kind of desperate to find out now how those court proceedings go. Hopefully justice is served, but you never know. I mean, seriously though, it's a bit ridiculous for this guy to work in the construction industry, and therefore, obviously, I mean, if you own a construction business, don't lie. You know all the permits that you're required to have legally, and you know all the rules and regulations that there are surrounding your area and your work. That's just obvious. Otherwise, you wouldn't be working in that area. I mean, come on. Like, for example, I'm a YouTuber, so I know all the rules about, you know, copyright, music, that sort of stuff, video length, you know, everything that's going on about, you know, YouTube Shorts, that sort of stuff, optimization, SEO, whatever. End screens, well, it doesn't matter. I'm a YouTuber, I know that stuff. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, you know, I actually don't know anything about YouTube. That would just be silly. In the same way that someone who works in construction can't say, you know, I didn't actually realize that you need a permit to build. This is the most dumb thing I've ever heard. It's obviously BS. He's just using it to try and, you know, get his way and, you know, get past the law that he knows is there. So yeah, when you think about it like that, hopefully the court proceedings all go to plan, and he is, you know, ideally sent away to prison. But, you know, it doesn't always work like that, does it? So yeah, ultimately, I want to be updated. So OP, if you could do that for us, it'd be greatly appreciated. Stay in contact, my friend. I want to know what happens, and I'm sure that all you watching right now want to know as well. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this one. A little bit more of a mature story, shall we say. I hope you guys had enjoyed a little switch up. Let me know if you did, because, you know, this one was probably a less entertaining story, but a more deep one, a more detailed one, probably a more realistic and a more, you know, understandable and believable story, shall we say. Although I'm not saying that a lot of the stories are fake. Don't worry, I'm not saying that. This one, though, definitely isn't fake. It just is too logical and too reasonable and too sensible to be fake. But yeah, let me know if you did enjoy it by commenting down below, dropping a like on this video, and ultimately subscribing up here. See this button? You gotta click that, yeah? Turn notifications on, subscribe to my channel, I post there daily. But if you can't wait till tomorrow when I'm gonna post again, check out this playlist of all my ProRevenge videos. You'll love it. Just click it. Let me click it now. Alright, I'm going. Bye.